situation apparent to the community that we cannot wait until next year to nominate a new Supreme Judge, because there's a lot at stake. There's a lot of things that are on the table that should be passed this year. And so we're out here, and also we're out here thanking our state senators, Senator Booker as well as Senator Menendez, because they are in favor of President Obama going through this process in a timely manner. So that's the overall reason why we're out here today. And so, saying all of that, we have a wonderful speaker here that's going to enlighten us further. Trying to find my note. Okay, Janice Siegel. I'm going to give her her bio. Janice Siegel is in her second full term as the chairwoman of the Westfield Democratic Committee and has been a committeewoman representing her voting district since 2003. She is an attorney who earned her law degree from the University of Michigan Law School and go blue. And is a member of 5 bars, including New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Ms. Siegel litigated for over 20 years, including as trial attorney for the U.S. Department of Justice and as an assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of New York. In private practice, she litigated class actions involving environmental and toxic substances issues, climate change, right? More recently, her legal work has been limited to pro bono work while she managed the business aspects of her husband's medical practice. That's a good wife. Ms. Siegel has held leadership positions in professional organizations, including chair of the Philadelphia Bar Association's Environmental Law Committee and member of the Board of Directors and chair of the Credit Committee of the Women's Legal Defense Fund. So all of that is a great bio. She has a great background, and so she can come forward so we can hear more about
Use your clipboard Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Blue skies, gorgeous out. So, I remember 2 glorious days in January 2009 and 2013, and I remember them well. January 20th, 2009 and January 20th, 2013. Do you remember those days?
Yes.
Yep. On those days, hope was in the air. I remember that hope. Do you remember that hope? In the face of an economy that was in free fall, we said, yes, we can. President Obama, having won both the Electoral College vote and the majority of votes cast in the nation, he was inaugurated as President of the United States. We, the people, had chosen the leader we trusted to execute faithfully all the duties of the President of the United States. But while we had hope, the night of that first inauguration, Republican leaders got together to plan their strategy to gain power. In a word, the strategy was opposition. They vowed that at every turn they would oppose President Obama. And so they did. That's what we've seen for the last 7 years. In 2010, Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the Senate, said his goal was to make sure that President Obama was a one-term president. Well, McConnell's plan didn't work at the ballot box. But that didn't stop the strategy. It persists. They are waiting for another election. Let me say that again. They are waiting for another election. Well, President Obama is not giving in to these tactics, and neither should we. We come today to support our president in the latest battle mounted by Republican United States senators. The Senate Republicans, led by Senator McConnell, now vow not to consider the person President Obama will nominate to become the next Justice of the United States Supreme Court. As Anita mentioned just now, recently there was a death of one of the justices, Justice Antonin Scalia, and with his death there's an opening on the Supreme Court. So the question is, will we stand by and just watch this opposition happen?
Nope.
President Obama has grit and determination and hope. What about us? Are we determined?
Yes.
Do we have hope?
Yes.
Well, one of the 9 justices needs to be replaced. Our Constitution tells us what's to happen next. The Constitution says that the president shall, that's the key word, shall nominate judges of the Supreme Court. Those are the words, shall nominate. The same sentence, very same sentence, says that the president, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, appoints judges of the Supreme Court. So there's this 3-step process right in that one sentence. It's in Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. First, the president nominates a person, and President Obama is expected to do that in about a week. And then the Senate advises. And as a matter of fact, President Obama had a meeting the other day with Senator McConnell and Senator Grassley, who's the head of the Judiciary Committee, and Senator Reid and Senator Leahy, and he said to them, you tell me, who do you advise that I consider to be nominated? And they stay quiet. They said, well, we're not going to do anything. We're going to wait till the next election. So what's supposed to happen is the president nominates, the Senate advises, and then there's a vote on whether to consent to the appointment. In plain words, the president has a duty to nominate a new justice, and the Senate provides advice and decides whether to consent to the appointment. Well, over the years, procedures have been adopted by the Senate for this situation. First, there's a Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and the Judiciary Committee meets with the nominee, investigates the person, and holds hearings on the nomination. And then the Judiciary Committee votes on whether to send the nomination to the full Senate for its consideration and vote. But the Republicans in the Senate say no one should be considered by the Judiciary Committee nor voted on upon by the Senate until there is a new president. A new president? Well, when last I heard, President Obama will be president for 322 more days. Almost a full year. Nothing in the Constitution says he should stop doing his job now. Do you think he should stop doing his job?
No way.
Similarly, nothing in the Constitution says that the Senate stops providing advice and does not vote on a nominee when there are 322 more days left for some of the senators' terms of office. In other words, they're supposed to do their job. Are they supposed to do their job?
Yes. Have you ever done their job? No.
No. As with many other aspects of the presidency, we can look to our first president, George Washington, for some perspective. In the election year 1796, George Washington added both an associate justice and a chief justice of the United States Supreme Court. George Washington had 2 justices appointed to the Supreme Court in the election year 1796. And as a matter of fact, 1/3 of all U.S. presidents have appointed Supreme Court justices in an election year. So this is not a novel situation.
What's the difference?
President Obama.
Thank you.
The second president of the United States, John Adams, having been defeated, he was defeated for a second term as president. Nonetheless, this is after he was Senate consented to the appointment of a Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. That justice was the greatest Chief Justice our country has had. You may have remembered John Marshall, Chief Justice John Marshall, very important justice. Well, he served for 34 years. 34 years. And there is the significance of appointment to the Supreme Court. The justices have life tenure. So the decision by the president has impact way after the president's term of office ends. That's why nomination and appointment is so important. At this point in time, whomever finally takes the place left vacant by the death of Justice Scalia will likely affect the decisions of the court profoundly. Why? Because on cases that concern issues hotly contested in the country, often the decision has been of late 5-4. The person who finally takes this position is likely to be that fifth. Well, what are some of the hotly contested issues now? By the way, there's no telling what's going to be hotly contested 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. And as I said, Justice Marshall sat on the court for 34 years. So we don't know what's going to be hotly contested, but we know what's hotly contested right now. Issues concerning regulations to curb climate change, the power of the president to allow certain immigrants to stay in this country, like the young dreamers. Who gets to be counted for the purpose of deciding how many representatives to Congress a state gets? What restrictions can a state place on a woman's right to choose to have an abortion? To name just a few. So we know this nomination is deeply consequential. In the past, and Benita would mention this already, in the past, on average, 67 days have passed between the time a president nominates a person to be a justice and the Senate votes. The longest stretch was 125 days. So there is plenty of time for the process to take place. As I said earlier, there are 322 days left of President Obama's term. So what's needed? What's needed is political will. That's where we the people, are vital. We need to let the Senate know what the people want. Our U.S. Senators, Cory Booker and Robert Menendez, support President Obama. They need to be thanked. They need to know that what they're doing is what we want. So we asked you to call them to let them know that we thank them. And we have the telephone number here for those who want to do that, or you can Google it. We have a petition here that we'd like you to sign. And that petition is to tell the rest of the Senate that we want action this year. And the people here are going to help you to sign on with that. But you can do more. We need volunteers to urge others to participate, to make sure the voices of the people are heard. So we ask you to sign up to do more. President Obama is determined. Are we?
Yes. Yes.
President Obama has hope. Do we?
Yes.
What does he say? Yes, we can.
Yes.
And what do we say? Yes, we can. And let me hear you again.
Yes, we can.
So let's get to it. Let's get a Supreme Court justice nominated, considered, and appointed. Thank you.
Thank you.